All right, we are live. Hello, hello, my friends. It's Jill Osborne. It is Sunday, May 26th, 2024, and it's going to be a bit of a challenging meeting for me. This is our normal weekly live support group meeting for patients who struggle with IC, bladder pain, pelvic floor dysfunction, COVID cystitis, Hunner's lesion, you name it. If you've got pelvic pain, hello, John. We are here for you. I live stream every Sunday, usually starting around 1 p.m. Pacific. We are right now streaming on YouTube and we are streaming on Facebook. Of course, it is a holiday weekend. And so, most people now, we get people who come in and watch the meeting live, but we get a lot of people who also watch the meeting that night. Now I've been doing a lot of deep breathing this morning. This is a challenging moment in my time. But before we go there, I want to talk very briefly about Memorial Day. If there are any IC patients out there who are active duty or vets, I want you to know that you have a safe place here on the IC network. I have worked with many active duty, many veterans, men and women who are struggling with pelvic pain. Quite a few as a result of injury that they've gotten through service. So many interesting stories to share. One of the most interesting was an F-16 squadron commander called. He was deployed over in the Middle East, and he had pain when he was sitting in the cockpit of his jet. And he'd heard about our cushions, and he called to order those cushions. And he told me who he was, and I said, well, I'm not taking your money. I'm going to send you whatever you need, because I come from a military family, and I'm very proud of my military background. And so I was absolutely delighted to send him a bunch of cushions that we could use with pilots who were flying a variety of planes over there. Another really interesting case of one that I worked with was actually a gentleman who was struggling with really severe bladder and pelvic pain. But he had all of the classic symptoms of pelvic floor dysfunction, trouble starting his urine stream, a lot of pain, not particularly diet sensitive, et cetera, et cetera. And so as I was what we call phenotyping him, I asked him, I said, so can you remember any pelvic injuries? He's like, yeah, maybe a few. And I said, well, can you remember any bad falls? And he said, yeah, a lot. And I'm like, oh, tell me about it. He goes, well, I was a paratrooper in the Army. And he did many jumps. And he said on quite a few jumps, they landed hard on their tailbone and sustained some pretty big injuries. And he hadn't heard about pelvic floor dysfunction. So, hello, Gay. We sent him off to have a pelvic floor assessment. So I am sure he's better now. Worked with a number of women. I can remember I was working with a Army band member. So active duty, serving in the band, who had such frequency, she couldn't sit through the concerts and had to retire early, which is heartbreaking because there are some people who want to be able to serve for 20 years until they can get their retirement. So I just want to do my annual reminder that if there is anybody out there who you're the wife of somebody who's active duty, or you're a veteran, or your husband is a veteran, or you're a veteran and you're struggling with pelvic pain, I want you to know that you have a safe place here at the IC Network. If there's anything that we can do to help you, we want to do that. I will also tell you that anybody who's active duty, if you call and place your order with me, if you want to order anything in our shop, we'll give you a huge discount. My dad served in the Navy during World War II. He was aviation ordnance. He loaded bombs on planes. All of my aunts and uncles during World War II, every single one of them but one, and there were a lot of them, were all active duty during World War II. They were pilots. My aunts were pilots. Both of my grandfathers were pilots. My mother's dad was a U.S. Navy test pilot. He used to fly the foreign jets that they captured to test them, to see what they could do. So I have family who served in Korea, my Uncle Hank, my brother, who was a nuclear operator, engine operator on a submarine. And so I just want to remember that our military deserve our support, they deserve our attention, and we need to honor those that we've lost. So, okay. My friends, if you follow me on Facebook, you know what's going on. During my, and listen, I've been a support group leader for 30 years. I have dedicated every day of my life for the last 30 years helping patients, and I've rarely ever asked for any help in return. And when things happen to me, I always use that as an opportunity to learn. Like when I used to have a lot of flares, it was like, what can I learn from this flare that I can share with others? Hello, Lori. So at our meeting last weekend, I shared that I had a mammogram. And I think I shared that they wanted me to come back in. So I came back in on Tuesday and had that next level of a mammogram, because the first mammogram showed what we call calcifications. Normally, calcifications are nothing to worry about. 90% of the women who have calcifications are pretty normal, often the result of injury. I'm like going, okay, well, I've been lifting a lot. I probably hit my breast. No big deal. But I had 2 needle biopsies on the left side, still quite tender. And I got the results on Friday. It's cancer. I have breast cancer. I just this is not my first rodeo. You know, I had a huge basal cell carcinoma on my shoulder. I had early uterine cancer 7 years ago. They had a hysterectomy. But I had this crazy premonition early in the week that I would be recovering from surgery on my birthday in July. I don't know. I just had this funky premonition. And gosh darn it, that's going to come true. So I have basal carcinoma in situ. It's just calcifications. It's not growing tumor yet, but it's starting. I mean, she's like, you're not the easiest. You definitely have cancer, and we definitely have to take care of this, but it's not growing a lot right now. Thank you, Renee. Thank you, Renee. So I don't know if I'm going to be here this summer very much, to be quite honest. I'm meeting with the cancer coordinator this week on Thursday. I am meeting with the surgeon the following week. Travis says, cancer a common complication with IC? No, not at all. I'm on the path to diagnosis currently, but I already have a hugely increased risk of cancer with ulcerative colitis. No, there's no direct correlation between IC and cancer at all. When you look at the phenotypes, really makes total sense. Really, the only connection that I think we can make are going to be patients who have HPV, human papillomavirus, because some of these strains of HPV are well known to cause cancer. So if you happen to have HPV and you happen to have IC, there is definitely a chance that you could develop some cancer, but they're not necessarily linked. So my 2 options are a lumpectomy with radiation. But there were kind of a lot of them. You know, she's like, yeah, you've got like over 100 of these calcifications. I had none 2 years ago. Or a mastectomy. And I do not see myself surviving well radiation because my skin is so sensitive. I've talked about that before. I'm obviously a central sensitization patient. So I am inclined to go for a double mastectomy. And my goal is to get it done as quickly as I can. As quickly as I can. The irony is that Travis says, I'm really glad to know that there's not a connection. I really need to learn more about IC, but I've been really catastrophizing about it. I'm also sending you the best of luck with your health and procedures. Honey, thank you so, so much. Nancy says she was recently diagnosed with breast cancer too. Did you have the ductal carcinoma in situ also, Nancy? The calcifications? So here's the irony. For anybody who knows me, you know, I was a mega athlete when I was younger. I mean, I was number one on my tennis team in high school, and then in college the year I played in college, and then I quickly turned pro and did a little bit of pro tennis while I was going to grad school. And then I switched from that to mini triathlons and swimming a lot and Stairmaster a lot. Oh, Nancy just 3 weeks ago. Nancy, oh, honey, we are the same, hon. We are the same. I'm so sorry that this happened to you. It's just the word cancer is just so life altering, you know? And I was thinking on Friday, because I got the news Friday at 2:30. And I was sitting right here when she called because I was working on an IC video that I'm going to put up called on urethral pain. And I was thinking, what do you do when you've just been diagnosed with cancer? What do you do? I just sobbed. I sobbed. And then I shook. I was shaking like a leaf. And then I called my sister, sent my sister a message, and my brother-in-law. They were close by. They came over. And then my two best friends came over Friday night and just sat with me and helped me because one of them had already been through it too. So here's the irony. And Nancy, I don't know if you can relate to this or not at all. I was a mega athlete when I was younger. And I come from a family, not to be, you know, guys, listen, I have no shame. I will talk about anything. You already know that. I am more than happy to talk about anything. So I grew up with a family of very, very large breasted women. My grandmother had, I kid you not, watermelons hanging off of her breasts. And she was so miserable. And I had 38 double D's in 7th grade. Now, granted, I was a chubby little girl back then. When I lost weight, I was down to a 36C. But I have never, ever wanted large breasts because I saw the torture that my mother and everybody went through. And so every single year I have said to everybody I know, I can't wait to have breast reduction surgery. And if I ever have breast cancer, then great, I can just get rid of it because I'm not attached to these breasts anymore. They are locked down tight 24 hours a day in a sports bra. And so I was praying to my mother on Friday going, Mother, please help me. Please help me. And then I got the diagnosis and I thought, darn it, Mom. And then I thought, well, now wait a second. She knew that I really wanted for a long time to deal with these large breasts. And so I don't know, maybe there's a little light in the sky, a little silver lining to this cloud, but it's just awful. Again, you hate to be the person that things keep happening to, and 2024 is just got to be the worst year of my life. You know, COVID pneumonia, emergency surgery for gallbladder removal, lost my parents last year, and now this. I just want it, just like God, hit me now when I'm young and I can deal with it. If we can just take care of it now so that 20 years from now, I'm a little bit older and I might not be able to tolerate surgery. Let's just do it now. Chimera says, I'm so sorry. What can we do to return a little bit of the help you've provided to us all? Is there a GoFundMe? No, money is not a problem, hun. I don't really need to do a GoFundMe because I have Kaiser Health Insurance, and they have a really good center, and so I'm very, very blessed that I am able to have health insurance. But thank you. But if you can become a member of the IC Network, that would be totally great, because I'm still working. We've got our spring magazine will be out next week. And my summer magazine will probably be out in August. So we do our best work in our magazine, the IC Optimist. Renee said Kaiser is great. We had it at one time. Yeah, they have their good points and bad points, but when it comes to surgery, they're really, really good. Nancy says, never stop doing you. Ann says, how are you doing? Honestly, I had a walk this morning. I was gardening yesterday. Anybody that I can talk to, I had this really weird thing. So there's a single lady, older lady that lives several blocks from me. And this morning, as I decided to go walk, because there's a part of me that wants to crawl into bed and never come out, after a cancer diagnosis. But it's like, Jill, you got to get out and walk. Something said, go on her street. You need to talk to her. And by golly, I went down on her street and she was out and she needed help. And so the Lord works in mysterious ways. I was able to actually help her quite a bit with something that she was struggling with. She's probably 30 years older than me. But, we got to watch out for each other. We've got to watch out for each other very, very much. Chimera says, I think I'm already a member, but I will check. Thank you, Chimera. Really, really appreciate it. Here, hold on a sec. Renee, I don't know about you, but man, my biopsy spots, my entire breast is one giant yellow bruise. That's crazy. Oh my God. Oh my God. Having a needle biopsy in your breast is an exercise in surreal. Torture isn't the right word because it's not torture, but it's just not the funnest thing in the world. So here's the hysterical thing. So I go and have my second mammogram on Tuesday morning. And then they do the extra one. They take it to the radiologist, and the radiologist comes out and talks to me and said, we're really concerned. We see things here that are pretty suspicious. So we need to do a biopsy to make sure you're okay. And I'm like, okay, we'll do it. I'm a tough girl. I can handle stuff. She goes, well, we can do it right now. And I was like, okay, let's do it. Now, listen, no regrets. If you have anything funky in your breast, you have to do it. You got to bite your lip and do it. But you have to be prepared. Having a little bit of Valium on board would go a long way in helping with a needle biopsy. And so they, I'm all wrapped in my little bra thing, my little hospital gown thing. And they walk me into this room with a square table with a little square hole in it. And then there was like a little arm that sat out on both ends. I'm looking at this table going, what is this? What is this? And they go, well, you have to crawl up on this. Okay. And I'm like, okay. And you have to like drop your breast through the hole. And I'm like, okay. So I crawl up on the table. I lay down. I position my breast correctly. And then you have to like lay flat. So your arm is like this. Your head is at a crazy angle. I mean, it hurt my neck more than it hurt my breast more than anything else. But I had a robotic needle biopsy. And so basically, as you're laying here with your breast going through this table, they attach kind of a clamp to it. So now you're anchored on top of the table by your breast. And then they kind of play with it a little bit and anchor a little bit. And then they do a whole bunch of x-rays because they're getting the three-dimensional picture of where the cancer or whatever it is. And so, you're just like going, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, do this quickly. My neck hurts. Right. That's what I was saying. And then they go, okay, it's time. We're going to do some numbing now. And I'm like, good, do it. Be done with it. I got to protect my neck. And she goes, now don't move. Don't move. I'm sorry. If you stick a needle in my breast, I'm going to freaking jump. So I'm laying there. And I only jumped a little tiny bit, like, just the tiniest little jump. Like, and she goes, you moved. And then they had to redo everything and take more x-rays, get everything in position as I'm laying there like this. And she goes, okay, we're going to do it again. Don't move. I'm going to try. I'm going to try not to move. I promise you. And so the first shot, just a little pinch, like getting that little shot. And then the second one, not that big of a deal. Then they go, okay, now it's really going to hurt. We're going sub-Q. So just bite your lip. It'll go away. We're numbing everything. You just got to get through the next couple seconds. And I'm like, okay. Yeah, okay. That certainly was definitely more painful, but I didn't move. Okay, so now they have it all numbed. Enter the robot. The robot moves over, and now the robot is attached to my breast. And the robot has like a long little tiny pipe that spins. And it spins right into your breast. And then when it gets to the area that they want to biopsy, and it does a big, and it resects all the tissue, and then it pulls it out. And so you've got this thing moving in your breast, and you're like going, okay, this is very weird. But again, my neck was hurting so badly. It's like, I don't care about the breast. You got to relieve the strain on my neck. So I'm like, okay, you did it. Are we done? They went, no, we have to do it again on the other spot. And I'm like, oh, please, God, help me. Please, God, help me. And thankfully, they were a lot quicker with the second side, and I knew what to do. And it really, honestly, it was like 20 minutes of just like being in a very awkward position with getting weird numbing shots. The biopsy itself didn't hurt at all. It's just, again, how do you ever prepare for that word? It's like, how do you ever prepare for a diagnosis of interstitial cystitis or bladder pain? I mean, it's not cancer, but you feel terrible. And sometimes the pain is so severe, you feel like you're dying. Bladder pain is organ pain. It's characterized being relentless and difficult to ignore. It's agony. It can be agony. And having a new diagnosis is incredibly difficult. And knowing what to do is very, very challenging when you're newly diagnosed. And I was thinking that one of the blessings of having a cancer diagnosis is that they have basically cancer coordinators. That's like the first thing. You need to meet our cancer coordinator. She's going to help with everything. And I'm like, God dang it, we need that for IC. We need that for every single patient diagnosed with pelvic pain, so that somebody can be with you and hold your hand and get you through this. Now, mine is stage 0. It's very, very high cure rate. It would be very rare, impossibly rare for this to go bad based upon what we know so far. But it does require pretty major surgery. It is what it is. We're tough. We can do it. We are strong women. We are strong men. If you've lived with pain for a period of time, whether it's IC or anything else, listen, you've never worked as hard as you're doing right now. But you're truly also one day older and one day wiser, and you've made it this far. And by golly, you're going to make it farther. I'm going to work on this. I'm going to get through this, just like you all are going to get through this too. Anne says, they say God doesn't give us more than we can handle. I agree with that. Renee said she had a biopsy in her thyroid nodule. Yikes! Renee says, I've had many biopsies. Nancy said she had 2 in 2 weeks. Yeah. Travis says, do you have any advice to get medical personnel to take me more seriously? Mine never took me seriously with colitis until I showed them pictures of the amount of blood I'd pass with every bathroom trip. But IC is completely invisible for me, and I've been neglected with it for years. Travis, that is such a good question. And I was making this point to another IC patient that I actually spend quite a bit of time with off and on. It's all about data. When you brought them pictures of the blood in your toilet, that was proof that you had a problem. It's hard for anybody to argue that you're healthy if your toilet is filled with blood. Now, in the typical IC patient, unless you have Hunner's lesions, you don't have blood in your urine. You just don't. You don't have visible blood in your urine. So one of the best ways to make your case is with a voiding diary or a pain diary, so that you can show them on any given day, I am peeing 35 times. On any given night, I am getting up 7 or 8 times a night. I am completely sleep deprived. And one of the things you have to remember, doctors are taught to diagnose this by observation. But the way doctors relate to others is through their own personal experience. And so if you say, hey, I have bladder pain, they're going to go, okay, you have bladder pain, no big deal, because they've never personally had bladder pain. It's like, well, lots of people have bladder pain. You can deal with it. And that, of course, is incredibly naive. And so it's really, really helpful for you to share how it prevents you from doing things you need to do. Like, doctor, driving in a car is so painful that when I get to work, I'm crying. Doctor, I cannot sit at church anymore. The wooden pews hurt too much. Or, doctor, whenever I try to sit through a meeting at work, I have to get up every 15 minutes and my boss is looking at me like I'm absolutely nuts. So if you show how the symptoms have interfered with your ability to function and perform what we call your essential life functions during the day, that's a really good way to make your case. So I think it's important to start gathering some data. And that is, do a voiding diary. Let's see where you are with your urinary frequency, urgency. When I have done my voiding diaries, I just had a spiral notebook. Each page was dedicated to one day. It was sitting on my bathroom counter. I wrote down the time that I urinated. I estimated a volume. You don't have to measure anything, just a teaspoon, a quarter cup, a cup, just do your best. You don't have to measure it. A drop. Then rate your pain on a scale of 1 to 10. And let's do that for a couple of days and see where you are. And then also, if you can, make sure that you write down the weird and unusual symptoms. So I was working with a patient early Friday, and we were going through the subtypes again. And while she said she could pee like a horse most of the time. She wasn't hesitating to urinate, which told me, okay, maybe her pelvic floor was okay. But then She said, as soon as I sit down, it hurts really badly. And I'm like, okay, what happens when you stand up? It goes away. I said, okay, so your symptoms are biomechanical in nature. You're describing pudendal neuralgia. She's like, yeah, but that's my bladder. It's my bladder. And I was like, yeah, no, it's probably not. And I believe they had already looked in her bladder and they'd found that she had a perfectly normal, healthy bladder. And so, we're talking a little bit more, and I go, you know what? Listen, do you ever have sciatica? You ever have pain that shoots down your leg? And she goes, yeah, all the time. And I'm like, okay, de facto proof you have tight pelvic floor muscles squeezing nerves. If you've got sciatica, you are in the neuromuscular group of the IC patient. And she's like, oh, I never thought about it that way. So things like that, start making a history of some of the more unusual symptoms. I, for example, just continue to struggle with a vibration in my left butt cheek. It's vibrating right now. It doesn't hurt, just vibrates. I was at my doctor. I had a SI injection on Wednesday. And, I was saying to him, I said, listen, pretty much every time I sit, I get this vibration right around my sit bone. And he's like, oh, really? And I'm like, how often does it happen? I'm like, every day. And he's like, oh, it didn't really know what to do. And I said, and listen, sometimes it wakes me up in the middle of the night and my whole torso is vibrating like mad because I'm laying on it wrong when I'm sleeping. And he's like, oh, that doesn't sound good at all. And I'm like, no, it's not fun. I want some help for this. So I had to make another appointment with them for that. So just start documenting things. Show them the weird, unusual symptoms. Kind of the devil is in the details here. Often it's that weird random symptom that will help them confirm a diagnosis. And ask for help. Just say, listen, I have things I need to do. I need to work. I've got rent to pay. I cannot sit through a freaking meeting right now. What can we do about this? Renee says, will your sister and relatives help you? If I was there, I would. Thank you, Renee. Yes, my sister and my brother-in-law said that they would move in. It's hard because we're going to be entering the harvest season, late summer. And they're farmers, so we have to do it early. So I am thinking that I'm just going to schedule surgery next week after I talk to the surgeon. Let's just get her done. I look forward to the day that I don't have to wear a bra because they annoy me. Nancy says, I think I'm having a flare because of the stress. Girl, I gotta tell you, it's really rare that I have flares, but I flared early this week, but and I was peeing a little bit more, but it was a pelvic floor flare. When you're under periods of intense stress, your muscles get tight. And as your muscles get tight, they start squeezing blood vessels and nerves. And then what does that do? That causes more pain. And so it's not, quote unquote, a bladder wall flare. It was a pelvic floor flare. And I have a wand and I have muscle relaxants and I know what I need to do. So it's helpful to have control. That's why you always want to invest in physical therapy. Who else? I was just talking to somebody else. I just filmed our surgery video for our master class. In fact, it's up on YouTube, and then the urethral video will be up hopefully tonight, the urethral pain video. So IC 101, our free master class on IC, is going to be about 40 videos. They're all free. They're available on YouTube right now. We've got about 16 or 17 up right now. One of the things that I say in the surgery video in our guidelines is that surgery is a last resort for a very, very small group of patients. And there are things that will predict if you're going to do well with surgery and things that will predict that you're not going to do well with surgery. So the patients who would do well with surgery are patients who have a small fibrotic bladder. Their bladder is really shrunken down, often scarred. They may have Hunner's lesions that are not responding to therapy. Those are the patients who have the best chance of responding to bladder surgery, whether it be an augmentation or diversion or even bladder removal. The patients who will not respond well to surgery or who are at greater risk of side effects are going to be patients who have a large bladder capacity, patients who do not respond to an anesthetic cocktail, patients who have pain beyond their bladder, patients who have pelvic floor driven pain. And so again, I was working with a patient who was like really thinking she was going to have surgery. And I was like, now, wait a second. Have you even had a pelvic floor assessment? And she said, no. And I'm like, but your symptoms all speak to your muscles. You know, you can't urinate on command, et cetera, et cetera. So before you even think about having surgery, let's do the easy stuff. Because I think, based upon what you're telling me, that you are pelvic floor driven, and pelvic floor physical therapy could change your life. And so, but the challenge here is patients get so desperate, you're like going, just take it out. Chimera says, use the ICA Bladder Tracker app. That's actually the IC Network Bladder Tracker app. I developed that app. That's my baby. That's one of our babies. So you can find the Bladder Tracker app in the Apple Store and the Google Store. Do I even have it on this phone? Hold on a second. Let me see if I do. I can show it to you. The challenge with apps is, man, they're a lot of money to make. Doing a baseline app is $20,000. And then every time you update it, it's like another $15,000. And honestly, that's a money drain that I am reluctant to invest in. So I don't know how long I mean, if I were to come into a little bit more money, I think we would update more apps and do more. But yeah, I don't have Bladder Tracker on there. Bladder Tracker, there's a video on it you can watch that will show you what it is. This is a new phone. That's why I don't have it on there. Travis said, for a long time, I wish my ulcerative colitis was cancer instead, so I'd be taken more seriously and have a higher chance of being cured. Travis, you're not the first person to think that way. You're absolutely not the first person to think that way. The blessing is that you have your diagnosis now. But Travis, let me ask you this question here. Did you ever take Elmeron? Because Elmeron, also known as pentosan polysulfate, has now been linked to inflammatory bowel disease. And it's been quite bad in some patients. So did you take Elmeron before you developed the ulcerative colitis? And are you still taking Elmeron now? Because if you are, they would pretty much say you need to stop it and give your bladder time to heal. Anne says, if you're on hydroxyzine and stop it, do you go through withdrawals? No. Hydroxyzine is not a medication that causes withdrawals that I'm aware of. I used it for several years off and on. I stopped it and started it frequently. I never had withdrawals. I'm not aware of anybody who's ever shared on the ICN that they've had withdrawals from hydroxyzine. Hello, Donna. Will insurance cover my surgery? Yes, it will. Kaiser Permanente. Listen, that's the one big benefit I get from the IC network. The IC network, obviously, I work for the IC network. And we have 3 employees. And also, oh, guys, you know what? I need to tell you about Donna. So Donna, for those of you who have been in the IC world for a long time, if you've ever come on over to our website and used our support forum, which is with the original forum for all IC patients before Facebook and all the social media, we had back in that day 200,000 patients a month using our support forum. There are hundreds of thousands of messages over there right now. And Donna has been managing our forum for the last 20 years, and she is an angel. But she has also been fighting cancer. She has a very rare spinal cancer. And she's now in hospice care. And so if there's anybody out there who would like to send Donna a card, if you email me, you can either send that card to me and I'll send it to her, or I might be able to give you her address. But especially for any old timers out there who are listening to this, we want to make sure that Donna knows that she is loved, and we are so grateful for everything that she's done, because she's written tens of thousands of messages to IC patients with questions. She's amazing. Mary said, I told my doctor I have to drive with a bucket in my car. It's so bad you'd think that that would make it clear, but no, it doesn't. You know, there's only one doctor, Christopher Payne, who ever tried to understand what IC pain feels like. Chris Payne ran the IC research program at Stanford University for many, many years, and he also chaired some National Institutes of Health IC meeting. Big IC researcher, really, really nice guy. He's now retired. He wanted to know what IC felt like, and so he gave himself an instillation of protamine, something very, very irritating to the bladder, to try to know what this pain feels like that IC patients suffer with. He was stunned, and he drained it out almost immediately. The pain was so severe. And so, you know, if more doctors, I don't know if I want all doctors to do that, but I think that they have to listen to each other. And they have to have a really healthy understanding and respect for the fact that bladder wall pain can be agonizing. It is agonizing. It is organ pain. It's characterized by being relentless and difficult to ignore. Aaron said, why do some have pain after driving in a car? I never used to, but a bad flare after a long car ride. Aaron, there's two things that come to mind. Number one, the bouncing of the car can cause pelvic floor spasms. And also, if you're holding your urine a little bit longer because you don't have easy access to a restroom, that could be causing more irritation to your bladder wall. Very common. Back in 1986, 87, when the first epidemiological study came out, it said that 50% of the patients that they studied had trouble driving and sitting in a car. Half of all patients. And of course, now we know, now that we're subtyping, it's like, okay, well, it's the pelvic floor patients who tend to have the most problems sitting in a car. Mary says, I have issues sitting, and it's definitely my bladder. Honey, but you don't sit on your bladder unless you have a prolapse. If you have a prolapse and your bladder's fallen out of position, then you are sitting directly under your bladder, and that would hurt. But if you have pain when you sit down that goes away when you stand up, and without a prolapse, that actually really is a neuromuscular issue as compared to a bladder wall issue. So you got to think that the bladder wall itself caused pain with sitting, and the answer is no, it doesn't. The bladder wall will hurt if there's urine touching it. If you have a dried estrogen atrophied bladder wall, or chemically injured bladder wall, or if you have Hunner's lesions, then anything that goes into that wound is going to hurt. So driving itself does not trigger bladder wall pain, but driving does trigger pelvic floor pain and nerve pain. Max says, do you have any advice for hormonal flares during ovulation or just before my period? Girl, I had exactly those same flares myself. You are absolutely not alone. I think, number one, it's really important to understand that these are very short-term flares. Usually that ovulation flare is a good 6-8 hours, and then it usually goes away. And so it's important that you not get yourself upset, what we call jump off jump on the runaway train of fear when you have a bladder, when you have a hormone flare. Just hormone flares, no big deal. That's when you know you're going to ovulate right around that time. Back off on your diet. Really just try to protect your bladder a little bit more. Do your physical therapy if you're pelvic floor driven. Also do things that can calm and soothe those nerves in the day or two before you think you're going to ovulate. And you do the same, you know, when your period starts. Just take a step back, calm everything down. You have to be really proactive for those flares. And that's how I knew I was getting better, Max, because when I stopped having those ovulation flares, then I knew things were getting better. And when I stopped having those period flares, then I absolutely knew that I was improving. Slow and steady, but it was an undeniable fact that those were the first flares that eased for me. Okay, Travis says is not familiar with Elmeron. That's good. You're taking fluoxetine, Salofoc, and prednisone. I don't know what Salofoc is. Prednisone steroid. Okay. Anne says, why is hydroxyzine given for the bladder? So one of the ways we used to describe IC is that it's like 100 mosquito bites at once in your bladder. So consider the chemical injury patient. If you've gone through chemotherapy or you're drinking a lot of diet soda, what you don't necessarily understand is that those are irritating and injuring your bladder wall. Remember, your bladder was designed 5,000 years ago. Hundreds of thousands of years ago, but the last evolutionary adaptation was begun 5,000 years ago. So our bladders have not been given the time to develop defenses against very, very strong acids. So we have to understand that our diet right now has the potential to irritate and wound the bladder if you're a massive diet soda drinker or going through chemo. So the problem then is you have a wound there. You have a lot of little wounds around your bladder and on your bladder wall. Well, when urine enters that wound, it does exactly what a mosquito does. That urine goes deeper into that tissue where it causes mast cells to release histamine. That's exactly what a mosquito bite does. They inject their venom. It causes mast cells to release histamine. Histamines make it swell, turn red, and make it hurt. So that same process is happening in the bladder. And so the reason why they give you an antihistamine is that it comes in and calms that mast cell-driven irritation. I mean, I took it for years. I was quite happy with it. One of the things that I like about hydroxyzine is that it has what we call a beneficial side effect. It has an anti-anxiety effect. And I was really, really anxious. And so having something that helped me sleep a little bit, I never found it really sedating. Of course, you don't take it during the day. You take it around dinner time. A little bit harder to wake up in the morning, but once you're up, you're usually fine. I never experienced residual drowsiness from it. But it did two things for me that led to me stopping it. The first thing it did is it made it harder for my body to tolerate hot weather. Before hydroxyzine, for 100 degrees, 105 degrees, I was in my element. My body likes heat. But while I was on hydroxyzine, I felt ill if it was over 85. I'm now back to the 100 and 105, and I'm fine because I haven't used hydroxyzine in 20 years. The other thing hydroxyzine can do is change your dreams. It can intensify dreams. We call it hydroxyzine dreams. So if you're having a sweet little happy romance dream, it becomes the best sex of your life dream. But if you're having a nightmare, it can become a night terror. And so hydroxyzine is known for causing nightmares. It took 8 or 9 years for that to happen to me, but when that finally happened and I started getting night terrors, and honestly, it was the dream that led me to stop. I knew exactly what it was that I was watching my family be murdered in front of me and my pets. And it was grisly. And I woke up with my heart racing. And I knew exactly what that was. And I stopped the medication and those dreams went away immediately. But nightmares on hydroxyzine are pretty common. Travis said, is it possible to have IC without pain and more so extreme discomfort? I constantly need to pee and it's insanely uncomfortable, but I not often actually pass much urine. When I do, however, it's almost a sharp burning pain. It's a million times worse when I walk or lie down too. Okay, so Travis, we have to figure out what group you're in to find the right treatment for you. You need to be phenotyped. I can phenotype you right now. We can see if we can narrow down the underlying cause of your symptoms. Okay, so it'd take about 5 minutes. So, Eddie, hold that question, hon. Okay, actually, Eddie, I'm going to be able to use what Eddie just wrote on YouTube. Okay, so understand that we're not all the same. IC patients are remarkably diverse. For some people, it begins in childhood. For others, it begins when they're much older. They have the same diagnosis, but are they biologically and pathologically same? No. For some people, IC begins after falling on their tailbone, while for others, IC begins while they're going through chemotherapy. Again, it's the same name, but are they biologically the same? The answer is no. And you really see that diversity when you look in the bladder, because the great majority of us, like 90% of us, have normal bladders. Less than 10%, 8% more likely, are going to have visible wounds on their bladder that we call Hunner's lesions. So for me, for example, I had 2 cystos. They always said I had a normal bladder, and yet I had very, very severe pain. But bladder treatments never worked, and I did them for a long time. Why didn't I get better? Because for me, I'm in that big group of patients whose symptoms are being driven by muscles and nerves, that it's something outside of my bladder that's victimizing my bladder and causing my bladder to act up, that's making me pee more. So let's try to phenotype you. Phenotype number 1, Hunner's lesions. So that's not you, because you don't have pain. Patients with Hunner's lesions have big bloody wounds on their bladder. It's not mild, it's severe. They're often down to eating 4 to 5 foods. They're exhausted, they're not sleeping, etc., etc. So the fact that you're pain-free really removes that off of the list here. But I don't like guessing. I like facts. It's always important to have somebody look in your bladder just out of curiosity, see if they see anything. They can do the simple in-office cystoscope. Phenotype number 2 is bladder wall driven. And in the bladder wall driven group, this is also a small group, we're going to look for 3 things. The first thing we're going to look for is chemical injury. Is this patient doing something, drinking a lot of coffee or green tea or soda, or going through chemo that's irritating their bladder? If that's the case, we got to get rid of the irritant and give the bladder time to calm down. The second thing that we're going to look for is skin health. Think about your bladder for a moment. It's the only organ in the human body designed to hold toxic waste, because urine is body waste. Urine contains ammonia and urea. So how can the bladder hold ammonia for hours and hours at a time and not get damaged? Well, it's a real evolutionary marvel, because it turns out your bladder is wet on the inside. Your bladder is like your mouth. It's a hollow organ with a really thick, robust coating of mucus. And the purpose of that mucus is to be a barrier. It protects everything. Unfortunately, that nice thick barrier of mucus is also estrogen dependent. So when you're young and have lots and lots of estrogen, you have lots and lots of mucus. But if you're on birth control, if you're on Lupron for endo, or you're just getting older, you don't have the estrogen anymore, which means you don't have the mucus anymore, which means your bladder's ability to defend itself is now compromised. It's compromised. That's not a disease. We call this the genitourinary syndrome of menopause or estrogen atrophy. Here, I need to stick eye drops in. My eyes are really dry. Okay. So, I don't know how old you are, but age matters. If you're, again, on birth control, if you are on Lupron, or you're just getting a wee bit older, that's going to affect your bladder. You're going to have frequency, urgency. You're going to have food sensitivity just because you're missing that barrier. That barrier is not as strong and robust as it was. Thank you so much, Bonnie. You're a sweetie. Thank you. I'm, putting on a good front. The third thing we're going to look for in the bladder wall group is chronic infection. But we're really not necessarily looking for a chronic bacterial infection. We're looking for chronic fungal infection. So Travis says here, thus far, the second type sounds very accurate as I drink a lot of carbonated drinks and take hormone injections. This issue also started for me a year ago when I started hormone replacement therapy. I am only 20 years old. I'm thinking about that. Travis, you know what I need to do is I need to die. You know what? Wait. Hold on a sec. Hold. Whoa. There was just a big thing on this. Let me, here, I got to do it on this computer. I swear I just saw a paper on this at the, okay. Allergies are so freaking bad this year. I don't know about you guys, but man, the itchy eyes, all that sort of stuff. Okay, here, hold on a sec. Hold on a sec. Let me search all the abstracts. Okay, we need to talk offline this week because I don't want to ask you embarrassing questions right now. But I may have some insight for you. I'm looking at something right here. I can reach all the top IC doctors. I already know some of them are doing surgeries. And so, Travis, if you could wait until like Tuesday and maybe give me a phone call, I can see what I can do to reach out and get you a lot more information. Okay. I promise you, but let's keep subtyping here. So, the thing, I don't see the hormone injections causing frequency urgency. I think the hormone injections would, if they were estrogen dominant, would actually make your bladder stronger. But I could be wrong. But the carbonated drinks gotta go. You have to lose that because it's the acid level. If you can switch to, hopefully you're not doing like a Diet Coke, stuff like that. If you have to have something carbonated, you can make yourself an Italian soda with some mineral water and some like raspberry flavoring, something like that. You can make yourself some spa waters. We have a lot of recipes in the IC Chef Cookbook. I have a lot of recipes over on the IC Diet Project website. The injections are testosterone. I'm still not sure but I can find out for you. Fascinating question, and now I want to do an article on this. And I know exactly who to reach out to. I know exactly who to reach out to. If you're suppressing estrogen, then you would be going into a state of estrogen atrophy, which would make your bladder more sensitive to those carbonated drinks. You know, we all come to a point where we realize that the habits that we got into when we were younger with diet eventually take a toll, and soda's the worst. Carbonated drinks are the worst, and energy drinks are absolutely the worst. Our third phenotype is pelvic floor driven. So these are patients whose symptoms are driven by muscle trauma, muscle injury. This is 85%. You hear me? 85% of IC patients are in the muscle trauma group. And so for these patients, their symptoms are related to an issue with their pelvic floor muscles. Usually it's from trauma, from falls, a history of athletics, sexual assault, falling and breaking your tailbone, things like that. So what happens is that these injured muscles become tight. As they get tight, they start to restrict blood supply to the bladder, and these patients enter a state of ischemia. If your bladder is supposed to get 24 units of blood a day and you're only getting 10, are you going to have a healthy bladder? And the answer is no, you won't. And the problem with these patients is you have no freaking clue that you've got a muscle problem. You're going UTI, peeing all the time. You go to the doctor, they give you the antibiotics, they don't work, the cultures come back negative. Then you try various bladder meds, they don't work. Then somebody at some point in time says, hey, to break it to you, I think you've got IC, this incurable bladder disease. They give you the diet, they give you various things, medications. They say, we'll see you in 6 months. And because you want to get better, you do everything. You follow the diet. You do everything they tell you to do for 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, and longer. But you still flare. Why? Well, our national guidelines say if you're not responding to therapy, if you're getting worse rather than better, stop what you're doing, take a step back and revisit the diagnosis. Because most of those patients will never get better on bladder therapies because their problem is muscles. What will work for them is pelvic floor physical therapy. And that is why I am better. Claudio says, thanks for all the hard work. Thank you, honey. You've been a member for 13 years? Yeah. I didn't. You know, guys, I started the IC Network when I was 33. No, I started my first support group when I was 33. I started the IC Network when I was 34. And I'm in my early 60s now. That is crazy. Okay, let's go to phenotype number 4. These are patients who have positional symptoms. You're fine when you stand, but when you sit down, it hurts. When you bend over, it hurts. You might feel pins and needles, areas of numbness. You might feel PGAD, where you feel an arousal sensation. You might feel like you're being poked by pins. You might have sciatica, pain that shoots down your leg. If movement changes your symptoms, then we have to look at your biomechanics. That is usually where muscles are squeezing nerves in certain positions. And again, so our therapy for that is to figure out which nerve is being compromised and then figure out how it's being compromised. And what therapeutically, what they're going to do is do some pelvic floor physical therapy along with some treatments that will calm nerves down. Then our last phenotype is our most complex phenotype. It's called widespread pain central sensitization. These are patients who have pain beyond the bladder. So they've got bladder pain, they've got bowel pain, they've got vulvar pain, they've got TMJ, they've got migraines, chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, extremely sensitive skin, wicked sense of smell, etc., etc. If you have that, then what we're dealing with is an injury to the central nervous system. And so, again, these patients are not going to respond to bladder therapies particularly well. What we have to do for them is to calm their central nervous system down. And we do that with things like palmitoyl ethanolamide, PEA. And we have to really work on getting that brain out of chronic fight or flight, because that's what the research has shown. Patients who have widespread pain, They're living in a constant state of fight or flight. The 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, their brain thinks their life is at stake. And what does that do? That raises your heart rate, that raises your blood pressure, that tightens your muscles for years. Well, one of the harsh realities of living in a state of fight or flight is anxiety. So these patients also have anxiety disorder. I had terrible anxiety disorder. They're catastrophizing, lots of catastrophizing. You become the no person. Hey, Jill, you want to go to what? No. You go out to eat? No, I'll flare. You want to go take a drive? No, it'll hurt really bad. Hey, you want to? No, I don't. I want to stay home. Now, I wanted to say yes to every single invitation, but literally within a second, my mouth said no. Why? Baffled me. I asked a lot of experts, why does my brain do that? I want to go. And the answer is because that's your brain guarding you because you're in fight or flight. Your brain, your brainstem, the most primitive part of your brain, is trying to keep you safe. And you're home. And for most of us, we're safe when we're home. So what is it guarding us against? Well, what the research shows is that for 80% of the children who develop widespread pain as an adult, there is a history of a major physical injury. So I'll never forget I have two patients that I've worked with. One was a gentleman really struggling with IC in his 50s who was run over by a car as a young child, and he had a fractured pelvis. That's a big time injury. And that injured muscles, nerves, bones. He had lots of broken bones. I think his sacrum was crushed. His hip was crushed, all sorts of stuff. And the legacy of that injury was a lot of pain, and it takes 14 days of pain to put the brain into a constant state of fight or flight. So therapeutically, we've got to get that brain out of fight or flight. Then another patient that I worked with, who also in her 50s, not doing well at all, she had a broken back when she was in high school. And her mother refused to take her to the doctor for 3 weeks. And it turned out it was a terribly broken back. Mother didn't believe her. So think about what that did to her nervous system, living with that constant pain for so long. Of course, that brain is going to try to get her to stay home and do nothing and not move. But the other 20%, it's a history of bullying or abuse. So Travis says here, so Travis, I was a no person for a long time. I only left the house 5 to 6 times between June and January because I was so sick and in pain the whole time. This was from the ulcerative colitis. Yeah, that's very, it's really hard when you've got something that's affecting your bowel and affecting your bladder. You want to go do those things. And I was just thinking about this the other day because I grew up the same way, Travis. I mean, in my 20s, I had the worst bowel spasms. And while my friends were all out getting married and having babies, I was just like you. I was at home, often laying in the fetal position in my bathroom, dealing with bowel spasms. They're gone now because I've been able to calm everything down. But why did that happen? Why did that happen to me? Well, for the other 20% of children who develop widespread pain as an adult, it's a history of bullying and abuse. So a constant theme, it's like a daily theme now here because I work with patients 5 days a week. A daily theme for that widespread pain patient is growing up in a home of an alcoholic, a violent alcoholic. So for that child, their safe place was school. But once school got out, their little brains, of course, went into fight or flight. And the closer they got to home, the more hypervigilant they became. And then once they're home, they're listening subconsciously for the car because they know that the parent driving the car is the abuser. And that child lives in fear all night long for years, a lifetime, 10, 15 years. Fight or flight is supposed, Edna, you're not late at all. It's fine. Fight or flight is short term. I mean, maybe for half an hour to an hour, once a once every 2 weeks. Your brain is not meant to be in fight or flight every single day. It takes a toll to be in fight or flight for a long-term period of time. But so imagine then that little child, their brain knows that their life is at stake. Their lower brain, their sympathetic nervous system is trying to save their life because they know they will be beaten if dad gets drunk enough. That child had no control over that. Then, and today, one of the most important things I get to say to that abused child, now an adult, is this is not your fault. It was never your fault, honey. You lived in a hostile environment. You were hurt. You were hurt. So I've shared that in my case, I grew up in a neighborhood with a young man who became a rapist and murderer. I was one of his first victims. In 4th grade, I was attacked. I did not leave my home without fear through high school. 4th grade through high school. Many people were hurt by him. Many. We have our high school reunions. We have our victim reunion. Some badly. The year I went away to college, he raped and murdered my neighbor. A girl I used to, let's see, did I swim with her? She was the daughter of a big construction company. Guy who owned a construction company. Just lived about 6 houses away from where I live. So what did that do to my brain? My brain knew my life was at stake. I didn't know it. My brain knew it. So I was in fight or flight every single day I went to school. And even on the weekends, I was looking over my shoulder, looking for this kid. So it was stunning, when you're that patient, when you're that adult struggling with widespread pain, and you're thinking, really, God, you're giving me 10 different painful conditions. Why am I being punished? That's how I felt. I felt like I was being punished. I felt like I was damaged goods. I felt unworthy. I felt unlovable. I went through a period of time where I didn't think that I deserved to eat at the kitchen table with my family. That's what that long-term abuse did to my brain and my self-esteem. And I will be very honest, I was really angry with my parents for many years for not protecting me. And now that they're gone, and of course I cared for them for many years, I'm in the same house now that I grew up in. I'm understanding a lot more the emotional toll that took on me when I was young. Okay, so anyway, sometimes the most important thing I get to say to patients is, this is not your fault. You've done nothing wrong. There is no shame here. There is no blame here. You were hurt. Edna says here she was molested by a neighbor when she was 4 years old. Edna, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. That is, and it was IC researcher Ken Peters at Beaumont Health. He was the one who, I don't know, about 15 years ago, did one of the first studies looking at the rate of sexual assault in IC patients, and it was significant. It was significant. It wasn't everybody, but there was definitely a significant subset of patients who were the victim of sexual abuse. And it's really a shock to me, the number of women even today who continue. I mean, literally all of my peers, pretty much every one of my peers, have been sexually assaulted. And we're supposed to be making it better. We're supposed to be protecting children. girls and boys. But things are sliding backwards, and we have to work on that. It's our job to protect. Okay, not your fault. You've done nothing wrong. What we have to do instead is we have to teach your brain that you're safe. The threat's gone. I'm an adult now. It'll never happen again. The challenge is that their brain remembers that early trauma. And so what we have to do is remind our brain consistently every single day that we are safe and secure. And we do that with really good sensory information. And so when we talk on the phone, I'll teach you a really, really good technique called I Spy. And you were in a similar situation of fight or flight in your teenage years as well, with your dad drinking and me being Travis, exactly. I can't begin to tell you the thousands to tens of thousands of IC patients who have exactly that same history. And so I really doubt that your symptoms today are the result of what you're going through today. I think that what we're dealing with is that whole central nervous system injury from, as well as any physical injuries that might have occurred when you were younger. And we know what to do now. So when you and I talk, we'll go through that, okay? Not a problem at all. Not your fault. Nancy says, you're so amazing, Jill. Thanks. You're very, very welcome. Somebody came in and asked what happened, what was wrong. I got a diagnosis of breast cancer on Friday. Stage 0. But I'm meeting with the surgeon, and I'm going to have pretty much already decided I'm going to have a double mastectomy just to be done with it. Sue said, you had just mentioned allergies. I developed bronchitis from struggling for the last few months, and now last night is because I've been coughing so bad. I actually started leaking when I coughed, going to urgent care because I could hardly breathe. I'm going to get with my doctor after the weekend, but trying to do everything not to cough. Any suggestions? You know what? Yes, Sue, it's what I'm drinking right now. It's called a medicine bomb herbal tea. Okay, but you may or may not be able to tolerate portions of it. But this was actually created by one of the clients of Starbucks. So you start with hot water with a little tiny bit of lemon. If you can tolerate lemon. I can tolerate lemon because I have a healthy bladder. If you can, great. If you can't, then you skip the lemon. Hot water, little bit of lemon. Then you put in a organic mint herbal tea. And then let me go get it. Here, hold on. Okay, so again, the base is hot water, little bit of lemon if you can tolerate the lemon. If you have Hunner's lesions, there's no way you're going to tolerate the lemon. You're going to do an organic herbal mint tea, and then the second piece is Tivana Pink Peach Tranquility. So it's got chamomile, a little bit of lemon verbena, which is actually not particularly acidic. Got some apple in it, little tiny bit of rosehip, little tiny bit of candied pineapple, which is sweet pineapple, not sour pineapple. Okay, and honey. If you were to get it at Starbucks, they use a green tea base, but green tea has caffeine in it, and it's very, very irritating. So I pass on the green tea. I just do the organic mint tea. And getting to your point about leaking, same thing happened to me exactly a year ago. For the first time ever, I was coughing so violently from COVID, I leaked. From COVID, I leaked, rather. And now I haven't been able to, it doesn't happen very often. And I actually don't leak onto my underwear, but I feel urine draining into my urethra. And I run to the bathroom. And that all started while I was violently coughing from COVID. So I would try, or if you can just do hot water with honey. Hot water with honey, hot water with mint tea and honey would be great. Or if you can find some organic honey suckers to suck on. If you go on over to the IC Network website, I've got cold and flu strategies in the self-help section. Go through all of those. But I'm telling you, this medicine balm herbal tea, just with that hot water, lemon, peach tranquility, which I have never found to be acidic, ever. Love this stuff. Honey is just like the perfect combination when my throat is crazy and I'm coughing. Claudia says, I do have a question. Why are incontinence symptoms such a taboo in the community? It's been a major symptom for my IC. I know it's rare, but how common have you seen it? Actually, incontinence is not considered a symptom of IC at all. Incontinence is a symptom of overactive bladder, which is more a neurological problem, or it can happen sometimes after injury, pelvic injury, things like that. So incontinence is not listed as a symptom of IC. Yeah, it's what it is. Bonnie says, thank you for all you do. I learn more from you than the doctor. Thank you, honey. Jody says, I've been using vagus nerve stimulation as a biohack to calm the central nervous system. Interesting. How are you doing that, Jody? And guys, bear with me on Facebook because it scrolls down and then I have to scroll back and forth and I get all the way out of order. Lori says, my gynecologist just told me the blood when I wipe is from the mesh from my bladder lift 15 years ago. I'm told I have IC. Oh, Lori, girl. Holy moly. Like, is the blood coming from your vagina or is the blood coming from your urethra? Is there a blood coming from your vulva? I mean, if your mesh is, so the problem with mesh and the reason why that we're trying to remove mesh now is that this polystyrene or polypropylene, it was never meant to be used in the human body. And when you put it in the human body, it moves. It shrinks and it moves. So they start, I mean, this whole documentary is filmed on this. It's a crime what happened. Because the company that originally started using this polypropylene mesh, they were buying it from an American distributor, and the American distributor said, hey, you're not supposed to use this in the human body. So this white mesh, literally, when they pulled it out of a human body, had turned black and was all crumpled. So it went from being flat to like a crumpled mass, covered with bacteria. The other problem, and I was at the first conference where they talked about that, the other problem with the mesh is that it moves through tissue. And so mesh is known to cross through the vaginal wall into the vagina. So if you're a woman having sex with a man, he can feel the mesh scratch his penis. The mesh can even transition across all the way through the urethra and even sever the urethra. So this is not a, Lori, for anybody to tell you that you have IC, but you're bleeding from mesh, all IC means is you have frequency urgency pain and they don't necessarily know why, but you have a giant clue, you have mesh and you're bleeding. So the question is what are they going to do about that? What are they going to do about the mesh? What are they going to do about the mesh bleeding? obviously the mesh is severing a blood vessel. So this opens up a really, really big can of worms for you and for the doctor, because removing mesh, and we have a lot of research on it. See, the challenge with mesh, think about a window screen. If you put a window screen on your hand, eventually the skin grows through the screen and kind of anchors it. And that's what happens to meshes that are used in sling surgery, is it becomes fully incorporated in skin. And so removing it becomes very, very challenging, but sometimes they absolutely have to remove it, or remove that section that's actually cutting something that's making you bleed. Man, I would want a lot more information and probably a second opinion if I were you. Travis said, is citrus sensitivity common with IC? Travis, it's about your phenotype. If a patient has Hunner's lesions, open wounds in their bladder, they're absolutely going to be sensitive to citrus. If a patient has estrogen atrophy, yes, they're going to be sensitive to citrus. If a patient is in ischemia, and they've been in ischemia for years and their bladder has not gotten good blood supply because their muscles are so tight, they will have some diet sensitivity, but that will reverse as blood flow improves because you're relaxing those muscles. So citrus sensitivity is quite common. It's interesting that you say it gives you stomach pain. Sue says she can tolerate a little bit of lemon. I'm only 4 weeks outside of my last Botox injections, and I'm concerned if maybe that's why, with getting the bronchitis at the same time, I would be talking to Dr. Peters about that. Huge clue, hun. Huge clue. Let's see what Dr. Peters has to say about that incontinence. It really makes you wonder. So let's go back over here. So you guys, whenever I'm looking over here, I'm looking at YouTube. Eddie says, I had a bladder cyst on, and Eddie, I'm sorry, honey. I'm sorry I waited so long. I apologize. Had a bladder cystoscopy done as a man with IC. This was very painful. The doctor said the bladder wall looks good and only had one small scar, and he did not see any sign of Hunner's lesions. Fantastic news. Kudos to you. You had it done. Listen, putting a cystoscope up the urethra of a man is not fun. You did it. And you got great news. Your bladder's in good shape. So if your bladder's in good shape, now what we have to do is look beyond the bladder to figure out what's victimizing the bladder. And for the vast majority of men out there, hun, it's tight pelvic floor muscles. It's an injury. 90 to 95% of the guys that I work with, that I've worked with for many, many years, we can go back and we can find those early pelvic traumas that cause muscles to become very, very tight. And so we have to rehabilitate these muscles and get them out of tension. Chimera says, for the person struggling with doctors not believing them, she found the disability paperwork from the ICA helped my doctors understand the ICME better. Good. Hi, Malia. Yeah, I don't know if they're still doing that disability packet. They probably are. I don't have a disability packet on the IC network. Not that I don't want to do it. We just haven't had time to do it. But what I do have is a really big disability resource center on our website with lots of articles that will help you navigate the whole thing, the different types of disability insurance, how to apply for disability insurance, what to do when you get denied. And the most important take-home message, I mean, you have to understand that there are 4 different types of insurance, disability insurance. There is private insurance from your employer. There is state disability insurance that you have to pay to work into. There's federal disability that you have to work into, and which is Social Security disability. And I'm zoning on the 4th one. It's really small. So for the most part, we're looking at state versus federal. Because the private insurance relies on what the state or the feds say. So what's the difference between state and federal? State disability insurance is designed to get you back to work. So they will only give it to you for a year. So these are the patients who have been in an accident. They need to have surgery, things like that. So, for example, when my first year with IC, after I lost my job, I was on state disability for a year. I have no regrets. I could barely walk, much less drive or work. It requires that they have had to pay SDI out of your paycheck so that you qualify for that. So again, state disability is all about giving you the resources you might need to get you through a short-term disability, but the end goal is to get you back to work. And you can work when you get state disability. They're going to just deduct your check a little bit. Federal Social Security disability is exactly the opposite. Social Security disability means that you believe you will never be able to work again. This is a long-term disability. You have to have a doctor who says you will never be able to work again. And to be qualified for Social Security disability, it's the same thing for Social Security retirement. Basically, you've got to work 40 quarters. That's 10 years. 4 quarters to a year. So 4 times 10 is 40 quarters. That's why when you're young and you're working part-time, do not work under the table. You want to work, even if you're only making $5,000 a year, that's 40 quarters. That will go a long way in making sure that when you're older, you will have a retirement benefit, or if you need it, a Social Security benefit. So do not work underneath the table. If you're in your 20s and you just literally haven't had a chance to work 10 years, they have a special test that they use to see if you meet the requirement. Now, with Social Security disability, the application is very easy. You can fill it out online. You usually do an interview. And the challenge that we have is people working for Social Security are not necessarily trained in IC. And your case might not just be based on IC. If you have widespread pain, it's going to be based on your bladder dysfunction, your bowel dysfunction, your migraines, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you basically make the application, don't dress up. When you go for your interview at the Social Security office, do not hold your urine. You need to get up and pee frequently so that they can see that, yes, you really need to get up and pee. You need to be prepared for the fact that like 90% of all applications are denied. It's nothing personal. It's really kind of a test to see how committed you are. And I know this because it was my first job out of college when I stopped doing pharmacology. So I was a black lung specialist for a year before I went back to grad school. So it's not personal. They're just kind of seeing if you're trying to fake it. Do you really have the persistence to really want to do it? So you can expect a denial letter. Don't freak out. You request a reconsideration. You give them a little bit more information, maybe some more doctor records, and there's an appeal process that you can go through. And generally, it's when you get to the judge that you get approved. You have an opportunity to speak to a judge about how your symptoms are affecting your life and interfering with your ability to work. But I want to share the story of an IC patient. She's a real hero because she was like literally one of the very first. She was denied 4 times. She got all the way to a federal judge. And that federal judge eventually approved her. So why was she denied at every stage? Because she was claiming that she had extensive frequency urgency, but they said there was no proof. How do we know you have frequency urgency? That's subjective. And at one of the appeals, one of the people said, well, your doctor never witnessed that you had frequency urgency. Therefore, we don't know if it's real or not. And so as she was appealing her IC claim up, The reason why she won at the end is because they were able to get the judge to say that doctors cannot witness frequency urgency that happens at night. That's an unfair standard. And her case was one that led to our current IC Social Security disability ruling. So be prepared to be denied. That's okay. Happens to almost everybody. And this is where you got to buckle down. Don't take it personally. And you just got to enter that system and fight for your right. But again, you've had to work and pay it into the system to be able to qualify for it. So what would have gotten her an early approval? What would have made her case so compelling that nobody could have denied it? Avoiding diary. Avoiding diary. If she had just tracked her urination, and I've been having this argument with an IC patient, and you know who you are if you hear me. If you're listening to this, you know who you are. Before you go to the doctor for a day or 2 or 3, do avoiding diary. Because that's how you know your progress. Is your frequency improving? Is your urgency improving? Is your pain improving? Then print it out and give it to your doctor and get it into the medical records. Or if you need to print it as a PDF and email it to them, if you're doing electronic records, the point here is that you have to provide that data. So, and if you do it twice a year for 5 years, you've got 10 independent records proving that you have frequency urgency and proving that you're getting worse. So disability insurance is possible, but you got to do your due diligence. This is why we've got a big disability resource center on the IC Network website. Sue says, I'm already drinking a lot of chamomile tea with honey and trying to prevent the coughing. I'm just praying that after the antibiotics and all the stuff they put me on Kixis, it's going to go away. The doctor was seeing me while I was whispering to him, talking, because talking triggered the coughing. I told him I didn't want to wet myself. I think he looked at me like I was nuts. Dr. Peters would totally understand that. Because, girl, the exact same thing happened to me when I was coughing from COVID. Hold on a sec. Jody said, I'm using the Pulsetto device. I'm not familiar with it. You know, a lot has changed in the neuromodulation world. Let me look at that one. Oh, Pulsetto reduces stress, beats anxiety, and sleeps soundly. It's a vagus nerve stimulator that biohacks your parasympathetic nervous system. Only 4 minutes to reduce stress. Pulsetto.tech. Huh. Isn't that interesting? So it's headphones. Oh, I'll check it. I'm going to check that out because my stress level is, you know, you always think life is going to get easier as you get older, but I hate to break it to you, it doesn't. And the stress levels definitely get a little bit tense. Jody, thank you so much for sharing that. Edna, it says, why do I automatically flare as soon as I eat or drink anything? Thanks in advance. It depends upon what it is you're eating. If it's caffeine, for example, caffeine is like a jackhammer to the nerves. You're going to flare very quickly. But if it's lemon juice, for example, you're going to have to wait until that lemon juice arrives in your bladder. It's going to be 30, 45 minutes before you're going to feel the effect of that. And for mild flares, you might not feel it until nighttime. You might not feel it until the nighttime when you've got fewer distractions. But the fact that you're automatically flaring when you eat points to your bladder wall. And I'm going to bet that's going to point to estrogen atrophy as the underlying cause. Why is your bladder so vulnerable right now? Because it's dry. Because your estrogen levels have dropped. We call that the genitourinary syndrome of menopause. Sue says, congratulations. I'm so glad to hear you're going to be changing the name of the IC network. So many patients are going to be able to find you, finally get the valuable information that they need to find the right help and recovery. Yeah, we definitely have to change the name because we now have another new letter to the editor in the Journal of Urology, strongly suggesting we should stop using the name interstitial cystitis completely, because this is a bladder pain syndrome or a pelvic pain syndrome. So yes, I'm inclined to go IC Bladder and Pelvic Pain Network. So ICBPPN. I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do, but the time is here. We're going to have to make that change. Or I had another idea yesterday that would involve creating a new website, but and then splitting things a little bit. But I don't want to say more because I don't want anybody to copy what I'm doing. Because some people watch these videos and then they try to copy me. Beth said, I spoke with you several weeks ago to discuss phenotypes and where my situation fits with my IC diagnosis. Thank you so much for that. It helped me see some things in a new light, and it has helped my stress level to take a chill pill. Thank you, Jill. You're a gem. Excellent, Beth. Love it. I'm so glad. I'm really so glad that you're feeling a little bit better. Sue said, I would definitely like to know more about that, and also wondering if it could help with the type of vertigo that I have, the stimulator that was mentioned. Yeah. Edna says she feels food immediately. Edna, I know you feel it immediately, but biologically, that's almost impossible because you have to swallow it. It has to be absorbed through your stomach into your bloodstream. It has to get to the kidneys, and then urine is made and it ends up there. So, in contrast, caffeine jacks up those nerves within minutes. So having a flare from caffeine would be very, very quick. I want to say this the right way. I want to say because I'm not doubting you at all. I think that we all develop some anxiety and fear around food. I have said very honestly that food, because I had such severe IBS in my 20s, I never enjoyed going out to restaurants. There's all people who love to socialize over food. I'm sorry. I don't like to socialize over food. I did not then. What I do like is hanging out with my friends with food that I know I can eat, but going out to new restaurants and trying new things, that's not my thing because I'm so freaking sensitive. And so I think you probably have that same level of premonitional flares. I don't know how to describe it, but it's real, hun. So really it's about finding the foods that work for you with a food diary. And we have a lot of information on diet right on our website. Once they looked at my bladder and they told me I had a normal bladder, it was like, oh, well, then why am I so food sensitive? Well, because you have very, very tight pelvic floor muscles and your bladder's in a state of ischemia. So how are we going to get your bladder to heal? Restore the blood supply. How do we restore the blood supply? With physical therapy. So once I had the physical therapy that helped restore all the blood supply, what do you think happened? I can drink lemonade again. I mean, this literally is hot water and hot lemonade. No flare. It's my comfort now. Travis said, I'm thinking of psychosomatic symptoms caused by anxiety. Yes and no. But Travis, thank you, because you said that you use good words there. I think it's more learned behavior. And I have to think about this a little bit. When we think about that widespread pain phenotype, and we know the role that the central nervous system plays, that injury to the central nervous system is the underlying foundation for widespread pain. And we know that injured nerves become very, very sensitive nerves. And so patients with widespread pain become very food intolerant. They become very chemically intolerant. They have very sensitive skin. They have a wicked sense of smell. And so I think it's a combination of things. But right now, Edna says, right now I'm having killer pain. I had very little ice cream and an apple also. So Edna, honey, how old are you now? And how old were you when your symptoms started? And is there any event that you associate with the onset of your symptoms? What do you think triggered your symptoms the very first time you had bladder discomfort? Age matters tremendously. So how old are you now, Edna? And how old were you when your symptoms started? Was there any event that you associate with the onset of your symptoms? Sue said, my theory about feeling pain when drinking, let's say, an alcoholic beverage within minutes is that the nerves in your body are all connected. And even though it hasn't reached your bladder yet, it knows it's coming. Okay. And you know what, Sue, what it reminded me of is my stress response when I travel. Because if you tell me right now, I have to get on a plane tomorrow, I will be up all night peeing and pooping. That's a stress response. That's my body reacting to that stress of that impending trip. Okay, Edna, she said she's 65 and she was 62 when it started. So Edna, that puts you in all likelihood the estrogen atrophy camp. So are you using any topical estrogen? That's question number one. What is the health of your skin? Because if your vulva is dry and your vagina is dry, then so is your urethra, so is your bladder. Your bladder doesn't have enough estrogen to produce that nice thick coating of mucus that it needs to be healthy and strong. So has any doctor prescribed estrogen cream to you yet? And Edna says that she's bedridden. I'm sorry, honey. Let's see if we can help. So quality and health of your skin matters. At the age of 62, you are in total estrogen atrophy. Your skin is dry, your vulva is dry, your vagina is dry, your urethra is dry, and your bladder is getting dry. So has anybody given you topical estrogen and estrogen cream, and are you using it? Because that is the single most important thing to get that skin healthy again. I decided to wear my wild spirit shirt, or my wild heart shirt, because I'm feeling a little wild right now. Edna says, no, my urologist said I had a healthy bladder. You might have a healthy bladder, but girl, you are in estrogen atrophy. It is a fact of life. Your ovaries are not producing estrogen. Your bladder needs estrogen to produce mucus. You are in estrogen atrophy. It happens to everybody. So it's not about the structural integrity of the bladder. We're not talking about Hunner's ulcers. We're talking about dryness. So are you having, so one of the symptoms, so there are a couple of symptoms with genitourinary syndrome of menopause. The urethra is kind of the canary in the coal mine. So it's often the urethra that starts screaming first. For me, that was when I was 51 or 52. It felt like there was a drop of urine stuck in my urethra that would not come out. And my urethra became, over a period of several months, very, very irritated. And interestingly, I threw myself on the mercy of my urologist. I mean, listen, guys, my IC self-help skills are excellent. I mean, hold that thought. My self-help skills are excellent. I threw everything I knew at this urethral pain. Nothing worked. Go to the urologist. He takes one look at me. I mean, imagine I'm laying on the table. My feet are in the stirrups. He's between my legs and he goes, Jill. And I'm like, what? Didn't you use the estrogen cream I prescribed for you last year? And I went, no. And he said, why? And I said, because of my brain. I'm 25 years old, even though I'm 63. And that's the truth. I didn't understand the importance of the estrogen. And he said, Jill, I saw this happening last year. That's why I prescribed it. He re-prescribed it. I started using it. All my urethral pain went away in about a week, 10 days. So Edna Alice, is estrogen atrophy that painful? Estrogen atrophy can be agonizingly painful, especially in the vagina. This is a conversation I have every week with patients. So it can be deep vaginal burning. It can be urethral burning. It can be burning on the skin on the outside. Like if your urine feels hot, so as you're peeing, it feels like it's burning your skin as it's coming out of your body. That's estrogen atrophy on your vulva. And so she says she's about to faint from the pain. Is it awful? I hate to go to the ER. Edna, do you have a fever? Are you dizzy? If your pain is so severe that it's scaring you, I encourage you to go to the ER because we want to make sure you don't have a UTI. Because the other thing that happens with estrogen, so think about, again, this nice thick coating of mucus that normally protects your bladder. It's thick, it's robust, it's a barrier. It pushes irritants in your urine away from the nerves and the skin. It pushes bacteria away from the skin. Unfortunately, as it gets thinner and thinner and thinner and thinner and thinner, bacteria can now reach the cells to infect the cells. And so it is common for women of your age, some, but not all, but some patients to get recurring infections. And so if your pain gets very, very severe, very, very quickly, we want to make sure you don't have a UTI because that's very common. So Edna says here she has a cream called estradiol. Good. That's an estrogen cream. Are you using it? And how often are you using it? So if somebody gave you estradiol cream, they found that you had estrogen atrophy. Sue says here, my estrogen helps me a lot. I use the least amount as possible. I have to ask, and also because I have a strong history of breast cancer and I'm overdue 4 years for my mammogram, I am making my appointment on Monday. My mom's cancer is estrogen driven. I don't know what mine is yet. And here, Alina said, well, Lori said, how do you use this cream correctly? I just got my cream, outside or inside? Both. Both. You can use it on the outside and you can use it on the inside. I'm more external than internal. I use my estrogen cream more around my urethra because that's where I feel it. And I'm not in a sexual relationship. If I were in a sexual relationship and trying to have sex, I would be doing it vaginally. But since I'm not that I wouldn't like to be, if anybody knows any nice single guys here in Sonoma County. But at this point in time, I use it mostly externally. Alina says, my journey with pelvic floor pain is a bumpy road from IC to pudendal nerve, now levator ani contractions. Girl, I feel your pain because I have the same thing. All started from my urethral sling placement in October 2023. I have a wonderful physical therapist in Southern California. My third doctor has scheduled me for trigger point nerve block. I do not know if this is going to help. Physical therapy improved my urethral symptoms, but it exacerbated the rectal pain. Sorry for rambling, but what else can be done? Well, okay. So pain, we have to think about what causes pain. I mean, the locations of pain. So pain can come from the nerves in the skin. Pain can come from nerves going through the pelvic cavity. Pain can come from tight pelvic floor muscles. Pain can come from the bladder wall. So skin health, bladder wall health, same thing. Pelvic floor health, nerve health. So having a urethral sling was in all likelihood to prevent leaking and incontinence, right? It involves surgery to implant it. And the question is that, so the surgery itself was traumatic. The surgery itself involved incisions. You've got some scar tissue. Because it was painful, your muscles got tight to protect you from that pain. And anytime you do surgery, you also are going to affect local nerves. So having that trigger point nerve block is reasonable. If you're having your third doctor scheduled you for the trigger point nerve block, I think that that's great. It'll be really interesting to see how you think with that. With physical therapy exacerbating your rectal pain, it just means that the muscles are all kind of interacting with each other and kind of compensating for each other. So we're going to have to work on the levator ana muscles around the rectum also. You know, I've really come to realize that anytime I have rectal pain, it's always coming from my muscles about an inch away from my rectum. And you know what I've started to do? Okay, again, I have no shame. You guys, really, I will talk about pretty much anything. So I have a lot of sensitivity around my left sit bone, and it vibrates. And there are moments when it can be pins and needles, numbness, you name it. But the vibration is what drives me the crazy. So now what I do is I actually massage around the sit bone externally when I'm doing my physical therapy, but I do it with my fingers. And I'm not internal, I'm external. I'm just really trying to manipulate these tight, painful points, trigger points around my sit bone. And I have to say it's really helping, but you have to get in there. Getting in there is hard. So I mean, like literally I'm laying on my back with my feet up in the air, and I've got my hand down near my rectum, but I'm massaging the muscles between my sit bone and my rectum, but I'm not touching or entering my rectum. I'm working on those muscles right there. So, you know, it's useful for you to, in my opinion, use your hands to try to localize where the pain is so that you can better describe it to your physical therapist when you're working with them. And ideally, the physical therapist can then give you some exercises that will help you learn how to work on it more effectively. Valerie says, I use estrogen cream every 5 days. If I use it more, my breasts swell up and hurt. Do you think it's enough? I have a family history of breast cancer. I get awful burning in my bladder, urethra, and pelvic area. So you're getting the burning from the lack of estrogen. Well, if you've got a strong genetic connection, obviously you have to be a lot more careful. What the research has shown is that topical estrogen is considered remarkably safe because it does not absorb to any great degree through the rest of the body. But obviously it is for you. You're that sensitive that your breasts swell up. So I think you're really going to need to talk to your gynecologist about what the best strategy is for you. And in the meantime, make sure that you're doing something like vulva balm This is a ointment that mimics the same effect as normal natural mucus down there. You want to keep that skin. You want to keep that skin as moist as possible because that moisture is a protection. So here it is. And it's very light. It's not sticky like Vaseline. Smells great. So using some of this on the outside, on your vulva, maybe, just in that area down there to give it a little bit of an extra coating. The coating has to be oil-based because it's hydrophobic. It pushes water away. So you might be inclined to use a lot of water. That actually doesn't help. What we have to do is push water away with something that is hydrophobic, water-phobic. We don't want hydrophilic, which means that it attracts water. We need to push the water away. And so coconut oil, vulva balm, something like that might be useful. Edna says, only once. The doctor prescribed it because she hurt me when doing a pelvic exam. So Edna, you have only used your estrogen cream once. Woman, not enough. You are in estrogen atrophy. I have worked with some ladies who by the time they're in their 80s, their little tissues down there are like dry potato chips and they're in absolute agony. The goal here is to keep your skin healthy and moist. And you know what happens when you put a raisin in a glass of water? It plumps up and absorbs that water. Well, that's the exact same thing that happens to these dry cells in your urethra and your bladder and on your vulva. When you give them estrogen, they plump up and they immediately start to produce mucus. But it's about being consistent. You can't just doing it once does nothing. I mean, I've been using my topical estrogen for 11 years now, and I fully intend to keep using it. The quantity that you use, whether you do it once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week, is up to your doctor, and it's based upon the health of your skin. But you have to understand, you are in estrogen atrophy, and you have to Google the genitourinary syndrome of menopause, because this is not a disease. This is not an incurable disease at all. This is dryness. And we know how to fix that. We know how to make that better. Topical estrogen is, if you follow Dr. Rachel Rubin or Dr. Ashley Winter on Twitter, they're very good reporting the latest research on that. And then, you might benefit from something that will give your bladder a bit of a coating effect. So one of the chondroitin-based supplements like Bladder Builder or Bladder Rest or Cystomend would give your bladder, at least that's what we believe it's doing, will give your bladder a little bit of extra protection so it's not so vulnerable. Edna says, what do I think about the spinal cord stimulator? I think it's going to do nothing if you have estrogen atrophy. This is about recognizing the underlying cause of your symptoms and fixing that. The spinal cord stimulator might control and reduce your symptoms, but it's not going to fix it. We have to understand what's driving those symptoms. And you are an estrogen atrophy patient. So doing things that focus on improving the quality and health of your skin are going to be the best bang for your buck. Alina said, same left side, did not tolerate the wand. So you've got so what's going on the left side? Is it your SI joint like me? Travis says, do you think estrogen cream would affect my medical transition to male? Oh, Travis, that's why I want you to call, because I want to put your case together and see if we can send it off to some of the top IC docs here. I don't know. This is what we do know. we had an 18-year-old who developed all the symptoms of IC. She was diagnosed with IC. She was diagnosed with recurring UTI. She was diagnosed with overactive bladder. She was diagnosed with chronic yeast infection. Her symptoms over a period of a year got worse and worse and worse and worse. And then finally, somebody said, hey, you didn't by chance start birth control, did you? She had. 2 weeks before it all began, she had just started birth control to reduce her estrogen levels. So that birth control was simply too strong, and it put her into genitourinary syndrome of menopause. When she stopped the birth control and allowed that estrogen to flow through her body, all of her symptoms went away. And that's a published case study I can give you. Edna says, I'm trying to send you stars. Where are they? I'm not sure. Mostly whenever I do these meetings, I say, if you like what we've done, come on over to the IC Network and you can make a donation at the IC Network or spend $25 and become a member where you get our magazine. I'm honestly not sure how to get stars on Facebook. I will tell you that I think it was, I mean, we might get a check of $11 every other month from Facebook stars. So well, I greatly appreciate every star we can get. What's immediately more helpful is to come on over to the IC Network website and look in our shop and maybe buy, a chair cushion that will make it easier for you to sit, or one of the supplements. And somebody was asking, where do you get Vulva Bomb? Easy, over on the IC Network website. This is one of our biggest sellers, hon. This is one of our biggest sellers. So it's under feminine hygiene on the IC Network shop. So just go over to icnetwork.org and click on the shop, and you can search for feminine hygiene and you'll find it right there. Huge seller on the IC Network. We also have a new Vulva Balm product that is a hypoallergenic rinse for patients who are struggling with soap. So this line of product, the company is called Medicine Mama, is fantastic. Anna says, oh, Jill, I'm so sorry. This has been such a difficult 2 years for you. I'll be next Sunday in Antwerp Cathedral thinking of you. We have different religions, but maybe the God is the same. The God is definitely the same. Spirit is spirit. I'm a spiritualist at this point in time in my life. Donna said, is there any connection between the shingles vaccine and flares? Not that I'm aware of. Not that I am aware of. We know with the COVID vaccine, okay, no, I got to take this back. Hold on. So we know that getting COVID can trigger a flare in 75% of the IC patients who get COVID. So having an active viral infection of COVID can directly affect the bladder. We find that cytokine storm that damages the lungs in the bladder. So in our study that we did, that we're still doing, 75% of IC patients who have gotten COVID have reported flares. 25% of it have reported very, very severe flares. And so, but that's not necessarily the case with other viral infections. Like I've had a couple of herpes, canker sores in the last month. I didn't flare from those. Do I have any data about the COVID vaccine affecting the bladder? None at all. None at all. Alina says, regarding the chair cushion, the max weight is 150 pounds. I'm 155. Would it work? Yes, it would work. Which cushion are you interested in, hon? Are you interested in? So we have the travel cushion, which has a big groove down the middle. So this is really good for people who have rectal pain, urethral pain, prostate pain. So when you sit on it, each butt cheek is supported, but there's nothing pushing up into your crotch area. So this is our big seller. There's a fabric one. I think we're out of the fabric one, and we have this one. The quality of these cushions are the best on the market. I literally buy every one chair cushion that I can find and test them. We actually had them made for the IC network for many, many years, but that factory closed down in COVID. So if I'm having urethral pain or rectal pain, that's what I sit on. But that's not the one I sit on every day. The one I sit on every day is this one, because my pain is really more in my butt cheek area. And so it's about 2 inches to the left of the groove around my left sit bone. I don't have a lot of fat on my butt. And so when I sit down, I tend to sit down on muscles and nerves. And so this is called the waffle cushion, and it looks really flat, but there's actually air in it. And when you sit on it, there's like an inch of air between your butt cheeks and the base of the chair or the chair cushion. So waffle cushion is great for pain beyond the crotch and in your glutes. But if your pain is crotch centric, you go for a travel cushion. Eddie says, as far as pain management, what helps me is 4 Advils and Aleve and water with baking soda. But if I'm really bad, I'll also add the Azo. But you have to remember, honey, listen, your bladder wall was really good. They didn't find Hunner's lesion. So what I want to know is, what's the health of your muscles? What's the health of your muscles? Because if your muscles are super tight and squeezing the blood vessels that support your bladder, that also could account for the pain and flares you're having. And that would also account for your diet sensitivity. But that should go away if we can get the blood flowing again and we get the muscles behaving healthy. So I want to know what's going on with your pelvic floor. And Alina says, yes, the travel one. Honey, 155 pounds, not a problem at all. You'll be fine with it. And if you aren't, you can return it. Sue says, what kind of recliner did I end up getting? I know it's been a little while since you mentioned it. And I'm also sensitive to materials. They put, okay. So number one, nothing from Lazy Boy. They use way too many chemicals. And when I went in to order a couch and chairs from Lazy Boy, I told them, very first thing, before I even looked at stuff, I can't have anything treated. Can you give me a piece of furniture that is not treated with any chemicals? They said, absolutely. What a load of crap that was. Paid them $2,000, got a new couch, got a new chair to go with it. They delivered it when I wasn't here. As soon as I opened the door, it was wet Scotchgard. The fabric was freaking wet to touch. And I had to literally plastic off my living room and put fans in the window. And then I called the CEO's office of Lazy Boy back east. And CEO to CEO, I ripped them. Because I almost had to go to the emergency room. I could barely breathe. And the local affiliate wasn't going to take him back. I said, you're going to damn well take him back. You promised me no chemicals. This is wet with Scotchgard. Anyway, one of the guys, listen, I raised hell. And finally, I got the guy in the warehouse to admit that not only was it treated, they didn't even let it gas off. They literally took the plastic off 15 minutes before they delivered it. It was wet with Scotchgard. unforgivable. And when you Google it, you will see, as I Googled it, lots of people have gotten sick from these chemicals. So I went to another kind of local store that used a different manufacturer. And when you look at all of the materials, they don't use any of these chemicals, none of them. And that's what I ended up getting. And then I said, I need you to gas it off in your warehouse. I want you to unwrap it, open it up for 2 weeks, and just let anything residual gas off. They're like, not a problem at all. I even got to go over to the warehouse and smell it before they delivered it, and it was fine. And if you want to, I can look at the manufacturer. Well, I've got, hold on. We ordered a couch and 2 chairs, and one was for my mom. It's a smaller, very soft chair for her to sit on, and it's in excellent shape. But I took the tags off. I'm sorry. You just have to look at the manufacturer websites and call them and just say, do you treat with chemicals? Also, in IC 101, so in our book, IC 101, which is what our master class is on, there's a whole chapter on, because Gay Sandler wrote this section. Let's see, hold on a sec. Chemical sensitivities and environmental illness. There's a whole section on building and remodeling a toxic-free home. And we have some recommendations. Not a lot, but some, and some has changed too. So anyway, if you don't have, and I need to update this, obviously, released it 2 years ago. We already have a lot of new information, but IC 101, first book that predicted phenotypes, and now the entire world accepts. I love it when things we do get accepted around the world. I love it when I hear the words that I've been using for 10 years coming out of the mouths of national IC researchers. We're powerful. And that was the point I made when I started the IC network and started working with a lot of these key people is that, IC patients have knowledge too, and we can contribute if you listen to us. Well, it looks like YouTube's about done. All right. Sue says they put so many chemicals on furniture. It's ridiculous. My redheaded mother broke up into hives from a brand new mattress, and it took her a while to make the connection. She asked, she went to a different store. Problem must be something that they started doing the last 20 years. Now she special orders with no chemicals. Make you wonder. Yeah, it's all the fire retardants too. I was looking at risk factors for breast cancer, and like I am sleeping in an old recliner that's probably 20 years old, and I know it's it's probably got fire retardants in the foam, but it's the only place I can sleep where my jaw doesn't dislocate. I'm screwed right now. Edna says, I took pain medicine and the horrible pain is getting worse. Then, honey, you need to go to the ER. Go to the ER. They need to check to see if you have an infection, honey. If it's getting worse, go to the ER or call your doctor or go to urgent care. My rule for me is if I'm scared, I go to the ER. I've been to the ER 3 times this year. COVID twice, 2 weeks apart, because my heart was racing. And then I had searing chest pain, which I thought was a blood clot from COVID, and it turned out to be my gallbladder. So if I'm scared, I go to the ER. So it's okay. If you can get yourself to the ER, you should go. It's a new set of eyes, because the fact, again, I mean, or having UTI test strips. That's the other thing you could do, is if there's somebody, hopefully there's somebody with you, you can order some UTI. I mean, send them down to Walgreens to buy some UTI test strips, and then you can see if you have a UTI. It'll take 5 minutes. And if you do have a UTI, then you can call your doctor and get antibiotics. Edna says they mistreated me when I went there last week. What did they do that mistreated you? Did they not believe you? Did they not? I mean, I was at the ER twice in 2 weeks. 3 times in a month in March. And because my heart was racing, and they found pneumonia, they were like, they're always skeptical at first, but then, they put the EKG on and they go, yeah, your heart's being a little funky right now. Okay. So maybe it's the way you're describing it. Edna, where is your pain? Here, let me ask you some questions here. And again, if you need to call 911, call right now and go. I think it's very important for you to go and get help if you're in pain. But let's see if we can at least try to isolate where that pain is coming from so that you can share that with them. So let me ask you this. Is the pain inside of your body, or is it on the outside of your body on your skin? If it is on the inside of your body, is it to the left or to the right or centered? Okay. So it was urethra, vagina. They said that my vitals are good. Okay. So you have both. You have pain on the outside and pain on the inside. So that outside pain is in all likelihood estrogen atrophy. And if you're having pain on the outside and pain on the inside, so, okay, it's centered. Is the pain more in your vagina or in your urethra or in your bladder? Right now, this very moment, where are you feeling that pain? In your vagina, in your urethra, or in your bladder? I know it's also on the outside, but where is it on the inside? Okay, Edna, then you need to call 911 right now. I want you to can you just pick up your phone and call 911 right now? She's saying that it's suicidal pain. So if pain is that intense, that severe, you need to call 911. Urethra and vagina. Okay. When did they give you the estrogen cream? How long have you had that? You've only used it once. This could just be, it could be just really, really severe skin pain from estrogen atrophy. Sometimes what can make that skin pain get better is soaking in a bathtub with some baking soda or some Aveeno. I think I've got some here. Hold on a sec. Oh, honey, so they gave it to you a month ago, and how often did they tell you to use it? Twice a week? 3 times a week? And you've only used it once in a month? You know, again, when your skin dries out, you don't have that nice thick coating over the nerves. Okay, you took the oxybutyn and the gabapentin for 14 days, but honey, none of those fix the skin. The reason why the nerves are screaming at you right now is because they're kind of exposed because you're so dry. They can help reduce the pain, but until we have to protect the nerves. The nerves need to be protected. Right now, the nerves are kind of exposed because your skin is so dry. So, of all of those, the single most important treatment is the estrogen because that's what's going to lead to the nerves getting protected. Right now, your nerves are not protected. You got to get your skin healthy. You have to kind of try to think away from the pain for a moment and ask myself, what can I do to get the skin as healthy as I can? The oxybutyn can help reduce the frequency. The gabapentin can calm the nerves down. But what we've got to do is try to get the skin as healthy as we can. And you have it right there. You're not using it. So go back and think about and look at the instructions and see what your doctor wanted you to do. Because that's the single most important thing for somebody with genitourinary syndrome of menopause. And this is a very hopeful situation because when we get the skin healthy, the nerves calm down and the pain can go away. She says the doctors prescribed me Suboxone and ignored my pleas to be hospitalized. I think that if you tell them that the pain is so severe, you're having suicidal thoughts, they will take that in a very, very different way. You need to call 911 right now. And you need to get back to the hospital. And you need to tell them that pain is so severe you don't want to live. Because that's what you're saying, right? Honey, you're not alone. You're not alone. This is remarkably common. Renee says, I have had to go to the ER for this. I will tell you, I had to go to the ER for this. I had terrible vulvodynia when I was in high school. It felt like my vulva was on fire. It felt like somebody had scrubbed the skin off of the outside with sandpaper. I would soak in the bathtub for hours. And it was all consuming pain. I completely understand how frustrated you are and how exhausted you are. So Edna says, yes, my husband has dementia and can't take care of me. You've got the estrogen cream. You don't need anybody to apply it. You can apply it. And so at least start with that. But you have got to tell the doctors that your pain is so severe, you're having suicidal thoughts. Renee says, it was the worst pain I ever had go. Then get on estrogen. Estrogen works. Okay. Okay. So she said, it feels like someone's stabbing me. So I need you to call 911 right now. You need to call 911 right now. Get them out. You need to go to the hospital right now. And you tell them what you've just told us. You feel like you're being stabbed. It's so severe. It's like suicidal level pain. So I need you to call 911 right now. Everybody here listening has done this at least once. That's what pelvic pain does. It's exhausting. You need help. Let's get you back to that hospital so that they can hear you and listening to you. Honey, we would love to be able to take the pain away for you. We can't. You have to go to the hospital. Call 911 right now. Our hands are tied. We would like to be able to do more. We can't. You deserve the best care out there. The best care out there are doctors. We're not your doctor. You've got to get to the hospital right now and ask for help. Sometimes if you're there twice in a week, they take you more seriously. Do you want me to call 911 for you? I can call 911 for you and get them out to your house. Do you want me to do that? I don't have any information for Hun. You're not a client of mine. I don't have any contact information for you. Okay. Call 911 right now. It doesn't help for you to, I mean, we know you're in agony. Good. Good. Call them. Ask for help. She says she's going to call. And I want you to describe it the way you described it here. You feel like you're being stabbed. Honey, we're sending you lots of love, lots of support, lots of encouragement. You're not alone. But we have to make sure that there isn't something else going on, like an infection. So it's estrogen atrophy, infection, and they need to do a workup and see if there might be anything else. Edna, honey, listen. You need to call 911 right now. I mean, with what you're saying right now, I kind of really need to call your police department and send them out to your house. you go and demand their respect. You go and demand their respect. You need to go to the hospital. You need to tell them that you're suicidal. I agree, Travis. I completely agree with you. Honey, if you won't call, I'm going to have to call for you. I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to do it. Malia on YouTube says, please remember that they always keep notes at the ER, and so they'll be able to make a cumulative case. Edna says, I will have to go by myself. Okay, do it, honey. Do it. So you tell them, I'm about ready to call the police for you. I don't want to have to do that, Edna. You've got to do it. But if you don't tell me you're gonna do it, I'm gonna have to call. I'm sorry. Okay, she says she's going to call right now. All right, honey. All right, guys. This is what untreated pain can do. All right, we've been going for 2 hours. That's longer than I thought. I thought I'd be bawling my eyes out at this point in time. I'm rather proud of myself today, given the fact that I had such terrible news this week. My approach is to get as much information and education as I can, and then have my surgery. So I don't know what this is going to do to my schedule this summer with doing support groups. Thank you, Travis. Thank you. So I'm going to keep doing meetings, and I'm also going to try to do these daily or every couple of days update, because I just want to chronicle it. That's how I cope. It's just how I cope. And if anybody out there has any wisdom to share with me on breast cancer treatment, I'm all open for it. My email address is icnetwork@mac.com. Janet, I got diagnosed with breast cancer on Friday. Can you believe it? Like, what the hell? Come on, give Jill a break. It's been such a brutal year, just a year of terrible grief combined with COVID, combined with having emergency surgery 2 months ago for my gallbladder. And ironically, I was just home from my gallbladder surgery, and I got the phone call, hey, it's time for your mammogram. And I was like, oh, hell no. I have fresh incisions. You may not touch me. I'll do it this summer. But then I was talking with one of my oldest clients like 2 weeks ago, and she had just been diagnosed with breast cancer. And I was like, oh, that reminds me, I need to have a mammogram. So my mammogram came back with calcifications. Renee says grief is a disease promoter. Oh, girl, I've been kind of waiting to see what this was going to do, because I mean, I'm not grieving, just getting through that first year. I'm doing much, much better now, but I was just out of my head with grief much of last year. I mean, I put on a brave front, but believe me, I was crying almost every day. So anyway, I had my first mammogram, and they found, the little calcifications. And they sent me, I actually got my op report before they did, called them right away and said, schedule me. They say, well, see you in a month. And I'm like, oh, hell no. Hell no. And I got a cancellation the next day. They did, which was Tuesday, and they did another mammogram, and they saw many more calcifications than they really did. And then we did 2 needle biopsies, and my whole breast is yellow. It's yellow. It's still tender to touch. 2 biopsies. Anyway, they gave me the results on Friday at 2:30, and it's positive for ductal carcinoma in situ, but it's very, 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 very early. And so a tumor has not grown, it has not spread, nothing at all like that. But the cells that are there that become tumors are there. And she said, yeah, you're a little bit farther along than the typical. I mean, it's not tumors yet, but it's on its way, just like my uterine cancer years ago. So the only treatment is surgery. And so it's either a lumpectomy or mastectomy. And I'm going for a double mastectomy. I've already made up my mind. And the reason why is because, honestly, I have been so annoyed by the large breasts that run in my family. I am locked and loaded 24 hours a day. You couldn't move these if you wanted to. I wear sports bras. My breasts, they annoy me so much. So much. I have dreamed for years of having breast reduction surgery. I have always wanted my entire life ballerina boobs, 32 A's. I've got 38 C's or D's, depending on how much weight I have, sometimes double D's. And so I'm kind of thinking this is my chance to actually live my later years and to be able to wear, spaghetti strap shirts and not have to always have you see me wearing bras. Renee said she had a friend who had a double mastectomy and she was glad, no more worrying. That's how I feel about it. That's how I felt, when they told me my gallbladder was all messed up. It's like, take it out. Just take it out. Okay, now I've messed up my shirt. So I'm meeting with the cancer care provider this week, and then I'm meeting with the surgeon the following week, and I'm just going to get it scheduled quickly. I'm just going to go for it. I am ready to I am not attached emotionally to these. They have annoyed me for decades. I want to be able to walk without jiggling. And that's the God's honest truth. And so, but anybody out there who has any wisdom or advice for me, I'm open to it all. I just know that with the lumpectomy, you have to do radiation, and my skin is way too sensitive to handle radiation. Janet says, oh, geez, you've been through a lot. Many prayers for your strength and complete recovery. You're so smart and knowledgeable. Be your own best advocate. I would have a double if I were you. Yeah. Oh, no, I'm going to. She says, I know ladies that did, and they're okay and lied. Yeah, that's my plan. Renee says, we will be supporting you. I would do what you're doing. Yeah, definitely. Because the thing is when you start reading about it, there are all these people who, like, I was reading something this morning about a woman who had, she had a mastectomy, but at the same time they did a reconstruction. And what she said is they had to leave. She called it like a platform of breast tissue in there to help rebuild the new breast. And that platform that they left in there, actually, she now has stage 4 cancer from it. And I'm not interested in reconstruction. I do not need these. I'm not in a relationship. Anyway. Hey, Travis, one last thing, honey. What you said something here that was really important. Self-grief needs to be spoken more of in this community. You're absolutely right. And the loss of touch. I think that, you know, we so isolate that we become starved for touch. We become starved for hugs and love, and we don't have the comfort that we need when you're at home. And so you're absolutely right. Yeah, if you can just give me a phone call on Tuesday, late morning California time, Pacific Standard Time would be great. If I don't answer the phone, just leave your number and I'll call you back. Okay. John said, is there any research regarding forever chemicals in IC? Not that I'm aware of, and it desperately needs to be done. But again, with the phenotyping, do forever chemicals play a role in pelvic floor? No. Do forever chemicals play a role in estrogen atrophy? No. Could forever chemicals play a role in the central nervous system? Maybe. Maybe. I think it's possible. That's why I just don't trust big chemical companies now. They'll just sacrifice us all in the name of greed and money, which is really sad. So anyway, all right, guys. Well, I think this is a good time to call it. I truly wish you the best. I'm going to go sit in the sunshine and just soak up some much needed vitamin D and just kind of get myself to relax a little bit. Thank you so much for listening to me and for your support and encouragement. As always, if you're looking for more information on IC, come on over to our website, icnetwork.org. Don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, do all that sort of stuff, because I am here for the long haul. And I thank you. Where does the support group leader go for support? To you. Because in the end, I'm a patient too, just like you. So, all right, I'm going to say goodbye first to YouTube. I'll see you guys later.